Oh dear, oh dear. The BBC look like they're in trouble. Uh-oh. Yeah, there's a report out. I've just been sent it on my phone. Now, of course, as you know, I'm a bit wary about handling my phone because of the electrical magnetic fields that sort of do things to your blood. But let's plough on. It says here, the BBC could be responsible for contributing to the death of 2 million people due to censoring the dangers of the mRNA COVID vaccines, according to a new report. No. The BBC? What, that bunch of upright standing people who tell us the news absolutely straight with no bias? What, they were covering up the dangers of that medical intervention that we had? No, tell me it's not true. Surely they can't be responsible for 2 million people's deaths because of not telling people of the dangers. Although, wait a minute, I do seem to remember, not that I've got a television, mind you, and I don't pay the tax that you have to pay to have a television, but I've seen clips from those people on the BBC, those journalists who were there asking that dishevelled Prime Minister at the time, not asking the right questions, not asking if there were any dangers to this medical misinformation, this jab that we were all given or told that we were supposed to be given, and perhaps a few bright people said, hang on a minute, isn't this an experimental drug? Surely we should wait. Oh, no, 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 have it. It's perfectly safe and effective. Yeah, so that would be quite surprising if the BBC, the mainstream media of Britain, and this supposedly bastion of broadcasting actually turned out to be covering up information that has made people suffer. Mind you, let's be fair, they weren't the only ones, were they? Let's think, who else was covering up information about it, who obviously knew, who were making on the background lots and lots of money? And we've seen Twitter files and WhatsApp files coming out. I think there was a health secretary responsible for pushing this and pretending that it was something that it wasn't. Now, if only I could remember who it was. Oh, wait a minute, it was all those people who worked for that big corporation. You might think of it as a government, but as you probably know by now, the government is actually a corporation, a for-profit business. Yes, you think of the Prime Minister's office as a bunch of people who've been elected by us to run the country, when of course actually it's just a corporation to extract as much money out of you as possible. Don't believe me? Go and check out the Prime Minister's office on Dun and Bradstreet and you'll see it's a registered corporation. Like the councils, they're all corporations. They're not actually administrative bodies that we've just asked to do it. They're actually for-profit businesses. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It seems that they too, of course, we know that they were not telling us the truth, because when one of the MPs stood up and said, hang on a minute, there's a bit of a problem here, the yellow card system, our own system for working out whether the medical intervention was worthwhile or not, we can see that there's been a lot of adverse effects there. When he stood up, people just left the chamber. In fact, twice, didn't they? Once on the 13th of December, he spoke to an empty chamber. Even the opposition government couldn't be bothered to turn up and actually question whether he was right, which sort of gives the impression that he obviously was right because they didn't want to question it. And then again on the 17th of March, when actually people were in the chamber, but they were actually funnelled out of the chamber, and he had to carry on talking to no one other than those who were recording it on Hansard and the people who watched it from afar on places like YouTube and the Parliamentary Channel. We saw it. We saw that there was nobody there. The 17th of March, the day that, of course, well, democracy died, didn't it? Because no one was believing him. So they clearly must have been covering up, just like the BBC, because we know that people have been harmed by it. We know that people have died as a result of this medical intervention, and the government clearly are a bit in the wrong as well. But not only that, the government are pushing down all these things. Have you noticed? Surely you've noticed. I've noticed. Yes, digital IDs. Who asked for that? Did anybody out there ask for digital IDs? Well, don't worry, you're getting it anyway. Yeah, that's so that you can be tracked and traced. traced, and all your medical information, and to be honest, anything about you, your personal information could be kept on a computer so that anybody in the government or the third parties that they hire out services to can find out about you. Yeah, it's useful, isn't it? If all these people who you've never heard of, you've never spoken to, can know all about your own personal information and indeed your medical information. But not only that, don't panic, because we're also going to have these 15-minute cities that the councils are pushing left, right and centre to fine you, you notice, fine you, that's what for-profit businesses do, fine you if you travel more than, say, 100 times from one end of the city to the other end of the city, or town, or even village. Yeah, it's a bit bonkers. Now, who asked for that? But don't worry, you're getting it anyway, because the government are giving it to you. And lots of these things, like the net zero thing and the central bank digital currency, and all of these things that are coming down the pipe, the government forcing them on, and yet nobody's asked for it. And now I've noticed, I don't know if you've seen this, just over the night, a few people have started to change their profile pictures. I can't believe it. And they're saying things like, I don't consent to being governed by such a corrupt government. Because if they're not listening to us, if they're not obeying what we want, we voted them in, then they must be corrupt. And of course, they didn't tell us that they were corporations. So that's another lie straight away. So I think that's true. I think, well, blimey, goodness gracious, if people are brave enough to say, I will not consent to be governed by such a government, then I think I might join them, because I didn't agree to any of this nonsense. I don't want this central bank digital currency, the digital IDs, to be tracked and traced, to be listened to by, I don't know, the 77th Brigade listening into my phone. I don't want them to have all my personal details on one computer so that anybody anywhere can find out all about me. I don't want to have this surveillance state in which our biometrics are being gathered up and we're going to turn into a Chinese state. I don't want to go into a cashless society where I can't have an exchange in private without somebody, a central bank connected to the government, knowing exactly what I want to do. So I don't consent to be governed by such a government at all. Absolutely. And until they are until they relinquish this thing about being a corporation, about being for profit, about trying to charge you, about trying to herd us into 15 minutes, I too don't consent to all of this. And I don't know about you, but there is a website that you can show whether you consent or not, and I'll leave the link in the description. It's up to you, of course. But who wants to be governed by a tyrannical dictatorship? Certainly not me, and it certainly seems that plenty of other people don't either.